Hello friends, and welcome to another episode of the Figure Central. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I went ahead and I 3D printed this diorama piece. It's been on my list for a while. I actually printed this before, but in a smaller scale. This time I decided to do the 1/12 scale. And this is the footage that you're seeing here of me printing it and then doing the priming work on it so that I can start painting it. The idea behind this is if you have a 3D printer or maybe have access to through a friend or something, I'm going to make this file available. I got this for free at the Thingiverse. It's actually part of a bigger piece. It's like a book nook. And so the idea was, hey, how can I make a diorama piece as fast as possible? And so as you can see here, the first step that I did is I just grabbed a sponge, some acrylic paint, and just started kind of dabbing away and not completely covering the piece, but just, covering enough to allow some of that black to show through so that it can kind of create that kind of weathered look. I did the same thing on the main piece here. And one little trick that I do with painting with a sponge is that I just grab my scissors and I cut it, so that way you can shape it and it can get into smaller areas that normally the bigger sponge won't be able to access. And so that's one thing that you can try out. I decided to go with this color. Like the previous one that I made was red, but this time I decided to go with the turquoise bluish color here. I wanted it to be a little more vibrant. The red tends to get a little lost in my toy photography, and so I wanted to go with something a little bit lighter. And the idea behind this is, again, we don't want it to be perfect. Number one thing, it's a 3D printed piece, so it's going to have some of the filament lines, and so the idea for this was not to be perfect. We're trying to do it, make it quick as possible to create the piece. So this paint dries pretty quick. So what I did is I did the rest of the main piece, allow the window pieces here to dry, and now that they dried, now I cut another sponge and I shaped it a little bit smaller so that I can now go in between the sections of the window so that I can get every angle as much as possible. And now we're gonna start painting some of the sections that I wanted it to be wood. So I just grabbed a brown color, and the brush that I use for this is just a very coarse brush to be able to create some of the streaks, trying to mimic the texture of wood grain. And so I decided to do that on the midsection here. Normally there will be a sign here, and probably in the future I'll print something out to have a sign there, maybe make it seem like it's a pub or something. And so for this section right here, the sponge was not gonna help me because there are little tiny windows at the bottom that are also gonna have the wood texture. So I didn't wanna get the turquoise paint on those. So what I ended up doing is doing another technique, which is just grabbing another coarse brush and then you just kind of dab the section, and it'll still create a very similar texture that you get with the sponge. And the difference is that you're going to have more control, so you're not going to get the paint on sections that you do not want. And then from there, I was able to jump into the other part of the window and start painting the wood. Then I went ahead and I finished up the bottom part. Now this bottom section in here, it has holes, and the 3D print itself didn't have additional parts, but you can tell that there's supposed to be bars down there. I looked at some designs online, and that was a very like a normal design for some English storefronts. So I just need to find some rods or something to put in that section, but I'll do that at a later time. In this section here, I wanted to have the frame that goes around the window and door to have a thicker coat of paint so that it stands out a little more. The technique that I used here is I pretty much get as much paint on the frame itself, and then afterwards I just smear the paint with the intention of trying to mimic the wood grain by creating those lines. Okay, so now looking at the top section here, now that it's almost dry, I'm already starting to see that I'm definitely going to need a second coat because there's still a lot of sections that are not fully covered. I did want to have this coat to be a bit thicker than I did on the windows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through it again, but this time I'm going to use this craft brush. The bristles are plastic, it's very thick, very coarse, and I'm just going to go through the entire thing and cover it all up. What I end up doing is just essentially put glue on each one of the columns here, and then I glued this section on first. If you notice, there was no measuring. I just made sure that I put it in a place where there will be enough space. Once it's all dry, then I'll go in and I'll cut the excess. It's just easier that way. And in here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to glue the transparency to the print itself and cut all the excess once it's dried. And then once you have the transparency, the plastic on it, then is where you can move to the using the diffusing method of paper. And again, the kind of get an idea is it'll do this, so it'll be very soft control kind of light is going to come through it, and for that you can use, I use wax paper, but you're welcome to use any other. Like, you can also use a paper towel that actually works as well, so it's strictly up to you what you have available. And here we're going to repeat the process again. We're going to put a little bit of glue in each column, but now it's on the actual transparency. And once we have that in there, then we're going to grab the wax paper and just glue it on. Same thing, you don't have to have an exact sizing for it. You can cut it after it's dry. And as you see here, I'm using the scissors to kind of cut it, the main chunks, and then after that I finished it off using the X-Acto knife. So always be very careful when you're using the X-Acto knife because that thing is sharp. Well, there it is, friends. This is the final result for this diorama piece. Like I mentioned earlier, this is one of the things that I wanted to do on my channel, so I'm so happy that I got a chance to do it. This diorama piece the idea was to create some diffuse light. As you can see here on the back, I put two lights. They're hitting that wax paper and the light is coming through, and it's a soft, even light, and that's what I wanted to do for this piece. Here I'll turn off the lights so you can kind of see what it looks like in this scene that I put together. And by the way, the photos for this will be on my Instagram, so definitely check out the Instagram for my channel, and then you can see the photos. So thank you so much for checking out the video. And if you're new to the channel, if you like what you see, please consider a small donation in a form of subscription. That'll really help my channel out. I would really appreciate that. And as a way of me saying thanks for all the support to my existing subscribers, you can always go to the link on my profile that has some free wallpaper, some screensavers that I've made for both phone and desktop. So thank you so much for checking out the Figure Central, guys. I hope to see you on my next video. Take care and bye-bye.